Syndicated presents Shep and Sean, featuring Matt Shepard and Sean Baligian.
Hi, he's Shep. I'm Sean. How are you today? Shep, I want to ask you something, and I'm not being funny, okay? I've been waiting all day to ask you this question. And you know why I'm asking you this question? Because you're fair. You're not a wiseacre like me. I openly admit I'm a wiseacre. Why do you think so many people all over North America take so much glee when Maple Leaf loses?
I don't know. I don't know if it's the original six thing. I was actually rooting for them. I don't know if it's the original six thing. I don't know if it's the Toronto-Detroit quote-unquote rivalry from '87 between the Tigers and the Blue Jays. People are still pissed off. George Bell was named MVP instead of Alan Trammell. I don't know. Maybe people with the Maple Leafs feel like they're or act a little superior, a little holier than I don't know, man. I mean, again, I was kind of rooting for them, but I will say this, Sean, and look, you picked Florida from the get-go. I don't understand how a team comes out in a game 7. A couple things were going through my mind while watching it. In a game 7, they don't have a shot on net for the first 9.5 minutes. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Credit to Florida, but still, 9.5 minutes. The other thing is after the game, listening to Brad Marchand talk about the pressure that a lot of the Toronto players have to be feeling was pretty impactful to me, considering the source, considering where it comes from. Love what he had to say. Really made me think a little bit longer. I don't think it changes anything in Toronto, but it's amazing to me that, that team seems to, you lose 7 straight game 7s and 5 straight games where you scored 1 goal in those game 7s. There's got to be something there, doesn't there? Don't you think?
There is, Shep. That's what makes this has been generations. Okay, this I'm not being funny. This is a franchise, and I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's always mouth. Like that franchise, their fan base. There's so much mouth. This is a year. No, really, this is the year, and all that stuff. But maybe, just maybe, there's more validity to that because they have had some really, really good teams, and they have had really, really good circumstances fall into their lap, and they constantly fail, constantly. And the names changes and the coaches change and really good lineups, really, really good lineups.
On paper.
And they just constantly fail. So maybe that whole life in a fishbowl thing has more validity to it. This team's Charmony soft. They are. I think everybody knows that. It's Charmony soft. And I think here's the problem with narratives. If a narrative happens once or twice and somebody tries to call it a trend, I think that's wrong. But this group, this core 4, and I always used to say not counting Willie Nylander. And then for whatever reason, he decided to join the club this year. Like it was just, where was that guy the past few games? It's just so weird that we have these conversations, all jokes aside, all 1967 bitch jokes aside and all that. It's so weird that we have these conversations like this because Mitch Marner's a tremendous hockey player. Austin Matthews is a tremendous hockey player. John Tavares, I really like Willie Nylander. I really do. But then he decided to disappear. Yeah. It's just so strange we have these conversations every year.
Yeah, I agree. I have a hard time saying that they're soft. I mean, you would look, you follow it closer than I do. I think I follow pretty close, but you follow closer than just about anybody I know. Don't know if I'm going to go that far. I don't think you win the Atlantic. That I think is a very good division. Okay. I don't think you pick up 52 wins, 108 points by being soft. I don't think you're going into the playoffs having won 9 of 10 and 5 in a row, being the second seed in the East, being soft. Let me ask you this. Is Washington soft? Probably not, because they don't have that lineage of Game 7 meltdowns, right? What is it? Why do we turn to the word soft when in hockey, maybe some other sports, hockey and football, I have a hard time using that word associated with those two sports because of what they have to go through on a regular basis.
Let me answer you, and I'm glad that you asked that question. Do you know why I think they're soft? Because when they get pushed, they don't more often than not push back. And I think you saw this build to a crescendo during this season or during this series. The Florida forecheck you saw was just leaning on them. And when it rained, it poured. I give them credit for bouncing back the way they did in Florida.
Yeah, 2-0 win. That's impressive.
Shep, when you get smoked at Game 5 at home, and in a Game 7,
I know.
you get smoked like that. I think, I was joking with one of my buddies yesterday because he said to me, "Who do you like in Game 7?" And I said, "Okay, I'm not trying to be funny. You have a team that if you looked up, poster child for playoff hockey and tenacity and Kachukness and Marchand-ness. You have that team on one side and the Toronto Maple Leafs on the other.
You're right. Yeah.
That's the way it is. And so I think more often than not, I use the term soft, not just the way they play, but I think mentally soft.
Yeah,
and I go back that series, and I know this will shock you. That series against the Habs in 2001, it was 3-1. How they let the Habs come back and win that series. But by the time Game 7 went, if I were a bettor, I would have put the house mortgage on the Habs winning that game. It was exactly that.
So let me ask you this, and this is a really interesting discussion. I think we used to think experience matters. Okay. Remember, Florida blew a 3-0 lead in the Stanley Cup Finals a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Now they won the series.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think anybody called them soft? The Denver Nuggets in the NBA, they won the championship just a couple of years ago. They got their ass kicked in Game 7 yesterday. If you look at certain other teams in sports, okay, where you feel like they've got a championship pedigree, they know what it takes to win. Why aren't they winning? Golf yesterday. John Rahm's got majors. Meltdown. But what he did was knew that he had to push the envelope, probably play outside his comfort zone or what he would have played the last few holes, because he knew he had to catch that guy. So that brings me back full circle to Toronto. Answer me this. The 6-1 final is galling, right? Mm-hmm. 3 goals in a 6-minute frame in the second period, alarming. Do you think Toronto had to play differently because they were down, thus making themselves more susceptible? Thus, the score may not be, even though it's a blowout, may not be quite as indicative had Toronto played their style.
You know what? When you're talking about a Game 7, you are forced pull out and this is where I'll agree with what Bill said. Soft is too easy. Series has ebbs and flows until Game 7. All bets are off at that point in time, because what we do, Shep, and you know this, okay? All bets are off at that point in time. You know what we do? Grit, heart, guts, all that shit comes into, pardon my language, all that crap comes into play, okay? And that's
which can be a little bit overblown, but okay.
It can. But I think when you're a team already that you hear people say that you're lacking toughness, when you're lacking toughness, and then to me, and Bill said they call LeBron soft too, 50K points, super soft. Bill, LeBron has won many championships.
Right.
LeBron has, as you said, 50K points. The Toronto Maple Leafs have what? Go.
Fair enough.
You're on the clock now. The Toronto Maple Leafs and Shep, you know what? I think you said it best, okay? Because when you're talking about Florida, do you know what the difference is? They won.
Yes.
And that's like John Elway. John Elway was known as a prohibitive loser. Yeah. Like that was his reputation.
But never soft.
No, but he and the Denver Broncos were the prohibitive losers, and you change the narrative only one way,
Mhm.
and that way isn't getting beaten in Game 5 and Game 7 at home.
So 100% with that. As soon as you say grit and toughness, I think Detroit Lions
Mhm.
because of the cliches used. Did they look tough and full of grit against Washington
No,
at home in their playoff game? They didn't. So I would never call them soft because I don't think it's appropriate. I think your point about Toronto's it's proven. It's proven. I just have a hard time with it. Like last year, you don't score 60 plus goals if you're soft. So I cringe sometimes at that word, but I understand why people use it. I look at it like Florida was just, and you said it. I think after maybe before game one, maybe it was after game one when we did the show together. They're just really tough and they're built for playoff hockey. That's why this series, by the way, against Carolina is going to be unbelievable. Right? I mean,
and I think that's why people throw the term soft out there. You know what I mean? I think honestly, I think that's what it comes down to. And Austin Matthews is going to have to live with it because I'm with you. Austin Matthews is a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
He is. Newsflash. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. 69 goals last year, 78 points in 67 games. But as well as I do, when you don't put up those bombastic numbers come playoff time, and especially in the big games, you're putting up a -3 or a -2 or a -4 like you did the one series. This was a series where Florida leaned on Toronto, and other than Toronto answering the bell in Game 6, which they did, I mean, full marks. I even put on social media. I was like, "Wow, props, Maple Leaf."
Yeah.
You know what? It played itself the way that they did. It really did. It played itself the way that it did.
Yeah, I guess it just took. I guess it just took longer, a little bit longer than people would have thought. Okay.
No. I get it. Let me read. 1967 bitch. The look on Shanny's face. He can't keep his job. Maple Leaf fans tossing beer and jerseys on the ice. Was there ever a doubt that it was going to go that way last night? It has to be mental. Shep, and I agree with you. It popped to his head.
Yeah.
The Tigers should make a play for a top-tier closer like Bautista. Ooh, that's a good thought. More on that.
7 says.
Yeah.
I think he's got like 13, 14 innings pitched, but he's got great stuff. So.
Yeah. What a disaster that turned into. Shep, I want to get
you
your
read that. Think about that. Brandon Hyde. I know we don't want to talk Orioles here, but just real quick, Brandon Hyde's team won 91 games last year, 101 games the year before, and he was the talk of baseball. In 2023, he was the manager of the year, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
Look at some of the recent managers of the year. Gabe Kapler without a job, right? I mean, and now he's out. And I get it because of some of the over the weekend. If you'd have seen the way they played, it's not the losing as much as it is how you lose. Right? How many times have we heard that? Because we've seen coaches of the year fired all the time. I mean, Dwayne Casey was coach of the year, and then he got fired in Toronto and came to Detroit. But it's how you lose, and when a team doesn't hustle out ground balls, when a catcher doesn't run quickly to the backstop to get the ball, when a second baseman chooses not to fake a guy into second base, the little things, or calling off then that manager / coach has lost his team. Right?
Shep, do you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me, and you had a front row seat for this. I think you and I have talked about this before. I thought that we were all going to serve the master's bidding, and the master being the Chicago White Sox for the next decade. I really did. I mean, with all those young pieces they had, like everybody else, I kind of scratched my head that Tony La Russa was the manager, but their pitching staff, all the young players, I mean, you know all the names. You had a front row seat. And it just, not only did it never happen, but it fell apart. And I'm not insinuating that the Baltimore Orioles are going to go full White Sox, okay? But they're a mess right now. They're a mess right now.
Yeah, only Colorado has fewer wins.
Isn't that crazy?
And only Colorado has a worse run-scoring differential than the Orioles, which ought to tell you something. You're right. You're right. A few years ago, while the Tigers were sucking, the White Sox were thriving. They had Eloy Jimenez in left, right? They had Luis Robert in center. They had a guy they're going to rotate in right field. They had Andrew Vaughn, up and coming, really good player out of Cal, top 5 pick, right? They had Tim Anderson at shortstop. They had Yohan Moncada at third base. I mean, they were thriving. Okay, like you said, good pitching staff, all that stuff. Here's the thing that they didn't really anticipate, and I quite honestly, I wasn't fully aware of it until the following year when we were at Comiskey, whatever you want to call it. We were in Chicago, and I'm in the White Sox clubhouse, and I'm talking to some of the writers and some of the radio people, and they're like, "Yeah, these guys they got fat and happy with the contracts." And it was a bad mix. It was a bad mix. Some of the guys who got their big contracts, they're like, okay, I've arrived. And it sure didn't help that the year before, Tony La Russa said, listen, Sean, we're at the end of the year. You don't have to run out ground balls. Okay. We just don't want anyone to get hurt, which kills me. But that was kind of the message that was portrayed. And then it was carried over into the following season. And look what happened. You've got to have that's the one thing I would think the Orioles can at least fall back on. Gunnar Henderson's the real deal. Adley Rutschman's the real deal.
Right.
Colton Cowser's been hurt. He's the real deal. They have other really important pieces that are really good. That's why I was a little surprised over the weekend to see what they did against Washington. But overall, I think they're going to find the right mix. They need some health, but it shows you how quickly it can dissipate, right?
Shep, that pitching staff as well. I mean, Cease and Lance Lynn and Kopech and like that was a good pitching staff.
Garrett Crochet.
Right. It was so weird. And it's funny because that's what my son was living in Chicago at the time. And he said, he talked to some people and he said, I hate to throw this term out there, but I'll say it. He said there was cancer everywhere in the locker room. Like it was some of what you talked about. It was some guys just being lazy. It was some guys going, I don't want to be here. Like there's just something wrong with this mix. And it's just.
Well, that was the one guy that was about was Tim Anderson. People tried to make sure, let's read his lips and let's try to figure out what he said and what he was meaning. And there was a little bit of overboardness with that, but he was a guy who, the errors at shortstop, right? Remember, he was a batting champion, Sean. So there were some people who were a little bit cool on him. But overall, when you've got that many guys saying, like, I've arrived and they're just not putting in the effort, the one thing you can say, of all the years I covered the Tigers, especially as the voice with Gardenhire and with AJ Hinch, I know it doesn't mean a lot to people. Those guys busted their ass.
Sure.
They were there early. They may not have been the most talented team. That was pretty obvious during my stretch. But they were there early and they worked.
Yeah.
Okay? And they played, for the most part, it's hard to do 162, 27 outs. And that's what we probably appreciate about this year's team as much as anything else, right? It's not just comeback wins. It's not just one win. It's how you go about your business.
I'm going to give love to a guy in a second just for that. Bill has a question about basketball, but first let me tell you about our friends at Wealth Advantage Group. If you're ready to take charge of your financial future, look no further than the Wealth Advantage Group, located in historic downtown Northville, owned by those two guys right there. 20 years of industry experience. They have taken care of me like family. They will take care of you like family. They offer personalized expert guidance. What works for me may not work for you. And these guys are going to help you navigate your own complexities of financial planning. Now, whether you're saving for retirement, or you're getting ready to sell your company, you're looking ahead, it doesn't matter. These are guys that can help you through every step of your financial journey. They work with clients throughout all stages of life and have clients in over 20 different states. The investment world is a complex one. If you're ready to start taking your finances more seriously, it's time to work with the experts. Reach out to my friends at the Wealth Advantage Group at 248-773-8574. Check out their website at www.thewealthadv.com. Shep, I'm going to say something about the Tigers, and I want to get to Bill's question because I always appreciate you guys chiming in. Akil Baddoo making those plays that he did in the outfield yesterday made my jaw drop. I have ripped on that guy more than anybody. So let me at least be fair and say, Akil, you aren't a major leaguer. You can't hit. You aren't really good in the field. But when you're hot, you're hot. Sheppy made 2 plays in the field yesterday that simply won the game for the Detroit Tigers, and I have to give him a tip of the cap.
Yeah, I thought he was really good in that sense. Love the timing, love the anticipation, love the read off the bat, all that stuff. So Akil Baddoo, Jackson Jobe, and Spencer Torkelson with all 3 RBIs, more RBIs this year than he had all of last year. And if people are following, I know we've got a long way to go for this, so it's probably an inappropriate topic right now, but you and I can talk about it later in the summer. Let's see. I mean, if you were to take an all-star for the Tigers, and probably more, because they have more wins than anybody else in baseball, Tarek Skubal is the first pick. If Javier Baez is in the discussion, and if you're not at least considering Spencer Torkelson, you're not paying attention.
I know. Listen, Shep, no disrespect to Torque. Javi Baez is number 2. And I'm being serious.
I know.
If we're talking about where he plays and comparing him against.
So where does he play? I would ask you that. Where does he play?
In the center field. I can't believe I'm saying this. Am I really? Is this real life?
Maybe it's just utility. Maybe he's a utility player.
Gosh, I can't believe it.
That's the funny thing about it. The only thing I would tell you about Torkelson, and I bring this up only because I saw this. I talked about it this morning. When you look, please, people understand. I'm not comparing him to Freddie Freeman or Paul Goldschmidt, okay, or Matt Olson or something like that. But if you look at where Spencer Torkelson is from a power standpoint, and that's why I told you before the season began, this is what this team needed. They need power, right? That's why everybody wanted Pete Alonso. Do you remember that?
Oh yeah.
Let's go get Pete. Let's go get Pete Alonso. Spencer Torkelson's got 12 home runs at first base. Do you know who's got more as a first baseman?
No.
Nobody.
Now
it's early, so I'm not going to go too deep on it. Okay, I'm just telling you it's early. He's 3rd in slugging this is Major League first baseman. He's number 1 among American League first basemen in slugging, and he's a guy who is 4th in OPS. So this team, what it needed power and it needed the ability to drive in runs. Spencer Torkelson is doing that for this team. To me, it's one of the best comeback stories in baseball right now.
It's Shep, and I'll openly say one of my biggest fears, and I told you before the season started, is where the home run's going to come from. And they're 4th in the American League in home runs.
Yeah.
You know, and it's funny because if you remember, there was some pushback. Oh, you don't need the home runs. Yes, you do. In today's baseball, yes, you do. 100%. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're not small balling people to death.
Not going to happen. Sorry. The league doesn't want it, man. The station to station stuff, that was cute in a day gone by. You need the long ball. No doubt.
Tell me the team. Anybody who says that to you, this is what I always ask people. I'm like, okay, that's your belief. That's fine. I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, sorry. I mean, that's not the way it worked. Tell me the last team that small balled their way to a championship.
Right.
Okay. That's all I'm asking.
Yep.
If you feel like, and I think a lot of this, Sean, is because of how teams strike out, right? I mean, and you and I grew up in an era where the strikeout meant something and it was bad, right? I mean, it was a bad thing. Now people just don't seem to care that much.
Right.
But I would ask you, and everyone talks about how much the payroll is. That's something we really get caught up in, right? What's the payroll for this team? Give me the teams last year who led the league in home runs. Maybe it's not fair, but I can tell you who they are. They're the Yankees, the Orioles, the Dodgers, the Braves, the Diamondbacks, and the Mets. Phillies were 7. There you go, right there. Now, again, it may not be all, fair and apples to apples, but I mean, that tells you something right there. You got teams that can go yard. They got teams that drive in runs. You got to score runs. Everyone talks about pitching and defense. I get it. I don't disagree with it. You got to score runs too.
Yep. A lot of comments from you guys. Stick with us for a second. But when it comes time to getting yourself a new house, oftentimes you're buying and selling at the same time. If you're doing one or the other, it doesn't matter. You still need to contact the right agent. Who do we recommend? That lady right there, Lindsay Broadwell. Your house is probably the biggest investment you will ever make, and that's why you need a pro. Lindsay and her staff have expanded all over Southeast Michigan. She's an expert in all facets of the business. And when it's time to move, Lindsay and her team will make sure you get the most out of your house and everything goes smoothly when finding your new home. Buyer, seller, even first-time buyer. Make sure you contact Lindsay at BroadwellHomes.com. She'll help you with everything from start to close. Licensed realtor at Real Broker LLC. Start your search today at BroadwellHomes.com. Do you guys really think the Tigers can be a closer away from really being a serious contender? I think they're a serious contender now. And if you want to laugh at me, you go right ahead.
Why would anybody laugh at you right now?
Yeah.
No, in all honesty.
Yeah.
Tell me what does it, if they're not a contender now, maybe you think it's too early. Okay, then nobody's a contender. Okay. But if they're not a contender, tell me what a contender looks like. If you say the Yankees, I would tell you, okay, they've got plenty of holes and Detroit beat them in a series. If you say the Dodgers, okay, the Angels just swept the Dodgers in a weekend series. And that's what happens in 162. How you can't say they're a contender is beyond me.
The Minnesota Twins won, what was it, 13 in a row?
13 straight before they lost to Milwaukee.
And gained 2 games on the Tigers. Hi.
Yeah, right.
How are you? They're still, I know, by the way, they're still 5 behind.
It's got the largest lead of any division leader. And don't give me it's the weakest division. Okay. I get tired of that stuff. Look, it's to me, absolutely they're a contender. Are they a closer away? Not the way this manager handles their bullpen. I think you're kidding yourself if you're not a little concerned about third base.
You know what? Another concern that came up because we were talking about it tonight. My son and I were just talking about it before we came on. I mean, with Reese Olson going to the
15
15. Let me get back to what Austin said, because Austin, honest to goodness, we just had this conversation. We're starting to get the injuries piled up. I think we even out a little bit and start losing some games. We keep hearing about this guy's coming back or that guy's coming back and soon. Right? I mean, whether it be Veerling, hopefully whether it be Meadows. And then just as you do that, you start to lose some of the arms. And that's disconcerting. There's no doubt about that. But I'm with you. Water usually finds its level. I'm not sitting back saying this team is a 667 baseball team in any imagination. But Shep, what is the mean? You know, I mean, that's the way that I look at it. What I thought the mean was, and I think what the mean really is, I think can be quantified by going back to August 10th. Look, this is a baseball team that's 30 plus games over 500. This isn't a small sample size anymore. You know what I mean? I mean, this is a pretty big sample size now.
Yeah. And look, the injuries, they're going to happen. I mean, this is the reason. I think Kansas City is the only team last year that used all 4 of their starters on a regular basis. They got 29 to 32, 33 starts out of every one of their starters. That's not surprising to me. I don't even worry about that. Like, nobody worried about it when Alex Cobb didn't break camp and was healthy, and now we're going to worry about Reese Olson. I don't think so. I told people who would listen, you got to get like 150 innings out of Reese Olson. It's going to be really hard to get because he's used to missing some games. You're going to need about 130 from Jackson Jobe. You're going to need about 170 from Casey Mize. You're going to need 200 out of Tarek Skubal. I mean, these are the things but if you don't get that, then you're going to have at least a runway of guys who can come up and provide you with that. If it's Montero, okay, I don't care. Give me somebody else. Who is it, right? But the injuries, I know they're bound to happen because it happens every year to every team. So that to me is not even concerning. And as far as losing is concerned, they're going to lose. Think about this. You lose 60 games. You've won 102 games.
Yeah.
You're okay with that, right? So I'm not sure about the losing. They win series. That's all that matters. As long as they win series, they're good.
Shep, I think my heart breaks over Casey Mize. Breaks. Like, honestly, I mean, I don't know him. He comes across as a good dude.
He's a good
And
dude.
for all the ups and downs that he's had, for him to come out and pitch as well as he was doing and to end up there, my heart breaks. I hope it's not long. I hope he can come back and pick up where he left off. Speaking of that, the Tigers picked up where they left off. Everyone was nervous about the defense, especially the infield.
Well, me
Which
too.
guys were going to be good and who was going to regress, but seemingly everyone has been good. How about Zach McKinstry? He's like Don Kelly, but good.
Yeah, he's been in a situation, in the right situation. He might be, along with Veerling, the best pickups that Scott Harris has made. Did they pick up where they left off? I don't know. I mean, they lost to Cleveland in the last game of the year. I don't think one season has anything to do with the next.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my opinion. I mean, did Baltimore pick up where they left off?
I've always felt that way. How many times did we have to live that BS with the Lions?
Right.
It was disgusting. I mean, really.
No.
Oh, that's where you want to finish the season. Stop it. There's no carryover. Knock it off.
I don't believe there is. I'm not telling people that I'm right and they're wrong. That's just not something I believe in. And the reason I say that is because of what we've witnessed. We've witnessed some of the things that are going on right now, and in baseball, Atlanta. I mean, hell, Atlanta had 90 wins a year ago. How'd they start out this year, Sean? So I just don't think Detroit's a different team, and they're a better team than they were a year ago.
Kevin, this team is more watchable when it doesn't resort to bullpen chaos. We're going to see it twice against St. Louis. I think we're in that point now. I thought that, Shep, and I hope people take this in the context in which I'm saying it, I thought it was a bad weekend. I did. There were a lot of bad things that happened over the course, like kind of bad baseball at times. And the Tigers took 2 out of 3 from Toronto. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good to me.
What do you mean by a bad weekend, though, in terms of the Tigers or baseball in general?
No, for the Tigers. I didn't think it was a good series at all against Toronto, and they still found a way to win 2 out of 3 against Toronto. Yes. I mean, that tells you you're living right as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Sometimes that's when when you don't have. It could be a team, it could be an individual. When you don't have your A game. Again, I'll bring up Scotty Scheffler from yesterday. He didn't have his best stuff in the front 9. Yep. But he did on the back 9. I heard a statistic, right? I think I was listening to PGA Tour Radio. Jack Nicklaus said of his 18 majors, and no one's won more. No one's finished in second more. No one's finished in third more. No one has more consecutive top 10 finishes in majors than Jack Nicklaus. But he said of the 18 that he had his A game probably in 6 of those.
Isn't that amazing?
It really is.
It really is. Yeah. Skydog said, I say that because they can lose a game as easily as they can win a 2-1 game because they don't have anyone that can slam the door on the game. I think I pissed off some people. Don Kelly, a running joke that people laughed at, but it's true. People used to laugh at Don Kelly on a daily basis because he was a joke. I've said it 1,000 times, Shep. I think you and I have talked about it. We have this weird thing in this town where I don't know how we do it, but somehow people fixate on a less than and elevate him on a level that he just doesn't belong. And I
agree. I don't know if we're the only market that does it. I don't know if we're the only city that does that. But
yeah, I can't. Let me tell you about All About Catering. All About Catering LLC is a full-service caterer. Look, it's graduation season. Are you looking for somebody? Use the people that we use. Graduations, weddings, bridal showers, corporate events, anything you need catering for from 25 to 4,000 people. All About Catering can and will take care of you. For Rick and the staff, customer service and satisfaction is their number one goal. So don't sweat your next big event. Go to allaboutcateringllc.com. Check out their menus, all their 5-star reviews, or you can simply give them a call, 586-731-1398 to get your event started. Shep,
real quick. I noticed that Bill said something about the payroll. That's got to get fixed, the imbalance. Do something about the Dodgers and the payroll imbalance. Remember this, 5 teams a year ago were in the lower half of Major League Baseball's payroll and made the playoffs. So I'm not saying that there isn't a discrepancy. I don't like it either. But when you've got Kansas City, you've got Milwaukee, you had Baltimore, you had Cleveland, and you had Detroit. All those teams ranked below 15, and they all made the playoffs. The Yankees and the Phillies had the largest payrolls, but they didn't win a World Series. Okay. So, I mean, Houston was sixth, I think, in payroll, and the Tigers beat them. So, how much does the payroll truly matter? I think the difference, and I've said this for a long time, the difference in the payroll is this: the Yankees and the teams that spend a lot of money, they can roll the dice on a player on an extended contract. We'll use Garrett Cole for the lack of a better example. And if at the end of that contract, they've got to eat any of it, like Javier Baez and everybody wanted to eat, they could do that. Whereas the teams like Kansas City and Milwaukee and Pittsburgh and Detroit, they sign a guy to a long-term deal. They've got to ride that out.
You're screwed. You're right. Yeah, it's Shep. I'm a big fan. I don't think you and I have ever had this conversation, and I know I ticked off a lot of NHL guys back in 05, 06. The NHL absolutely positively had to have cost certainty. They had to. It had to happen. And I think it works well in the National Football League as well. I really do. I think there should be some kind of a cap. I just absolutely positively do. And you know the funny
in baseball?
Oh, I do. It'll never happen. You know it's never going to happen. But
well, I don't think it will. But if you're going to do that, you better have a floor.
Oh, 100%.
Don't give me that a team can't spend, and then a team can get away with spending like Pittsburgh does. That's bullcrap.
Shep, that's why it works in the NHL in particular. That's one thing I think the NHL does right, because if you're hanging out underneath the floor, you know what I can do? Hey, you know what? I got a guy on long term. I got one more year paying this guy $9 million. How about I trade Thomas Holmstrom to the Phoenix Coyotes or the Utah Grizzlies or whatever the hell may be. It's honestly, I'm a firm believer in that. I think it will.
I'm with you. I agree 100% with that, but that's the reason they won't do it, is because of the floor, and the owners aren't going to vote for that. And as far as and Bill says all those teams were playing for runner-up at best. No, they weren't. You're trying to tell me you're going to tell me that those teams felt like that they had no chance at beating any of those other teams?
Shep, I think when you have a team in that range, let's say 20, if a team in the 20 range wins the World Series, man, I will be ecstatic. I really will. I mean, unfortunately, you and I have talked about this. For all the success that Tampa had, they were the model franchise. For all the success the Guardians had, for a team to win, that would be something altogether different. Mind blown type of stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I suppose. I just don't. I'm not one of those guys who believes spending money is the biggest difference maker. I mean, last year the Cubs were mediocre, roughly 500, and they spent.
Sure.
I mean,
it's not a fix-all. It's no. It's not a fix-all. I remember. I bet you can figure out who it is. A certain National Hockey League owner told me that the best part about having cost certainty is they had to do that because the damn owners couldn't help themselves.
That's right.
That was the owners policing themselves.
You can have that in every sport.
Isn't that crazy? It had nothing to do with the players. It really didn't. It was like the owners had to police themselves. They couldn't control themselves, I mean, well, at least some owners, that's for sure. So, Shep, do you have any qualms with calling the Tigers the best team in baseball?
I would say they're one of.
Okay.
I still think it's hard for me not to look at the Dodgers, just because I would say that I think they're the best team in the American League right now.
Yeah. I see. I feel the same way. I don't like to put this into the atmosphere, but I'm going to say it anyway. Honestly, why not the Tigers as the American League champions?
Yeah, I could see that. I guess. So let me ask you this.
Right.
Last year, I think Milwaukee, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, Milwaukee had the biggest lead of any division winner. They in Philadelphia, so I think it was the Dodgers, Phillies, and then Milwaukee, Did anyone consider Milwaukee the best team in the National League?
No.
Okay. And yet they were pretty much wire to wire. Okay.
Right.
Pretty
Right.
damn good team, pretty
Right.
consistent team. I thought, they did a lot of things well. They just didn't have huge names. Everybody knows Christian Yelich, but there's a lot of other guys who just played their roles really well. I think Detroit, not that they're Milwaukee, but around baseball, not many people know those players. And I think it's a little premature for anyone to say any team is the best team in baseball, but we've got a measuring stick right now. People would say, wait a minute, Detroit plays the Angels and they beat them, and then the Angels beat the Dodgers, and you and I both know that's not how it works. When you look at the Dodgers lineup, I don't know how you can't say they're the best team in baseball. When you've got Freeman and you've got Betts and you've got Ohtani and you've got, that Will Smith behind the dish, Max Muncy, who's playing terrible baseball right now, hitting like 187. He'll eventually break out of it. Tommy Edman's been a really good player. I don't see any team as good as they are right now. Doesn't mean it can't change.
Those 3 AL Central playoff teams could combine their rosters and still wouldn't beat the Dodgers in a 7-game series. Fellas, if we're going to fix a sports money issue, let's start with getting some governance around college football and the bleep show that's going on. It is heartbreaking. It is the wild, wild west. And I do not know, Shep, without interference, which I don't like. I don't know how without interference they don't fix that. It is a bleep show.
Yeah. I think I could be way off here. I think what's going to end up happening is you might see like a private equity firm buy college football.
Yeah.
And then have it, the Power Four conferences, an AFC and NFC, lack of a better, and they're separate from all the school stuff. That way, NCAA still gets, the Final Four and the NCAA tournament. College football's on its own.
Yeah.
I think that's what's going to happen. And those players will get paid by the private equity firm that will sell the rights, television rights, and everything else. I think that's what's going to happen. You're going to see if I were this, I would gather a number of billionaires and say, here's your next project that you can invest in.
Yeah.
I really do. I think that would work.
I wouldn't be at all surprised. All right, before we get out of here, did you know that thousands of Metro Detroiters have already called Legacy Partners to get help with their home and auto insurance? Our friends at Legacy are one of Southeast Michigan's top independent insurance agents. They provide a full-service, one-stop solution for all of your insurance needs, personal and business, large and small. They made it easy for me and my family. They'll do the same. They help people like me by fixing mistakes other agents have made, asking the right questions to get the right coverage put in place to properly protect you, and help save you some money. Chances are, if you haven't checked your policies in the last year, you are probably paying too much, and guess what? You could be underinsured. Enter Legacy Partners. Give them a chance to help with your home, your cars, life insurance, Medicare enrollment, or your business insurance needs. Call them today. I was glad I did. I still take advantage of the savings, 586-209-4106, or visit legacypartnersins.com to get started with your new quotes. All right, Shep, make sure you listen to Shep every morning. He's all over the state and all that stuff. Anything else before you get out of here?
It just was one thing about, I was really touched by what Peter DeBoer said after the Winnipeg loss to DeBoer's Dallas Stars in overtime 2-1. First of all, he opened his press conference. There's no glasses. He's dressed in a suit. He's appropriately responding. And rather than look at me, look at us, what does he do? I want to first send out my heartfelt condolences to Mark Scheifele, right? And then what does he do? The second part of his answer, and it was a beautiful answer. The second part is, that coaching staff from Winnipeg deserves the Jack Adams Trophy. They're that good. They've done a great job with it. I mean, just class all the way. Not about his team, not about himself, not the fact that he's undefeated in Game 7s and all this other stuff. Just acknowledging what a hard-fought series it was and the pain of a young man going through the loss of his father and the courage that it took him to play the very next day. I thought it was awesome. And I was moved and touched by it and emotional about it too. It was fantastic.
Shep, I hate to sound like a douche, but I know Pete. Pete was my first boss. What
Really?
you see, Pete, yeah, it was my first boss. What you see with Pete is what you get. And I'm proud to say that is not an act. Yeah. He's a good dude. Good. If you remember, he was with the Whalers, then he went to Kitchener, and then obviously he got kicked upstairs to the National Hockey League. But right. He's a guy I've actually stayed in touch with. He's a good man. He's a very good man, and I
love hearing that. I love hearing that.
I'm glad that you brought that up. I mean, he is sometimes, and you're never going to catch me mention names, and you know it as well as I do. I think there are guys that say the right thing because they feel like that's what they have to do to keep up their persona. Yeah. Pete DeBoer is not one of them.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, but I think he's a class act all the way. So thanks for letting me say that, Sean.
God bless you. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, Todd.
Bye-bye. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Shep and Sean, featuring Matt Shepard and Sean Baligian. Executive produced by Sean Baligian and Todd Losey. Theme song, incidental music, and related sound effects are from Still Alive by Anti-Ghost. Engineering, mixing, and graphic design support provided by the Unsyndicated Podcast team. Don't forget to like and subscribe on all your favorite channels. While you're there, be sure to rate and review the podcast. Call the Unsyndicated hotline at 248-237-3257.